I'm at Airways Flight School, which is located at Västerås Airport, 110 kilometers from Stockholm. I'm here to take a flying lesson, which I got for my 40th birthday by my mom. For many years I've been flying simulators on my PC, and now it's time to feel what it's like to fly a real plane. This is Martin, my flight instructor. Martin and I went to school together, and he's partly the reason why I became interested in aviation. We are going to fly this single-engine Diamond DA40 light aircraft. Airways Flight School also operates the twin-engine sister Diamond DA42.
Check after engine start.
Oil pressure checked.
Yep.
RPM 890 to plus minus 20. Ja,
det är helt okej.
Warm-up time.
Det behöver vi inte ha för den är så varm nu. Så.
Ja. PFD, MFD, normal mode.
Trycker du in den där röda knappen igen så går vi tillbaka till normalläget.
Yeah. When you fly, you need to go through different checklists to make sure you don't forget any important step. I get to read the checklist and Martin is showing me which actions to take.
Stoppa på dig alltså.
Martin is taxiing the plane to the runway. Before we enter the runway, we go through the before takeoff checklist. Here we are performing an engine run-up. During this process, the electronics on this aircraft checks the engine for faults. We are taking off to the north from runway 01. You always take off into the wind, but today the wind is coming from the side, so some rudder input is required to keep the plane on the center line. To begin with, Martin is controlling the plane and I am gently holding the stick on my side to feel the control inputs. There are some turbulence today, so this small airplane is bouncing around a bit. Martin says it's going to be calmer once we get over the water of Lake Mälaren. After the turn, I get control of the airplane, and when we reach our cruising altitude of 1500 feet, I reduce power to 2000 RPM, which will give us a cruising speed of 90 to 100 knots. Now we're about to leave Västerås controlled airspace, and that is done via different exit points, which uses visual clues in the landscape. Our exit point uses the local golf course as a reference. Here's a map showing the flight path marked as a red arrow pointing at the golf course exit point. Here Martin is showing the aircraft fuel range on the navigation display. The plane has a full tank of about 100 liters, and the map shows that we under current conditions would reach about 1000 kilometers and still have some reserves. Now that's certainly a fuel efficient way to travel for up to 4 persons if you compare it to a car running on gas. My job is to keep the plane at 1500 feet and follow Martin's heading directions. A lot of gesturings here. I can't remember what that was all about. Now it's time for some maneuvering, as Martin asks me to do a 360-degree turn. After the turns, my first landing gets closer and we go through the approach checklist and enter Västerås airspace via the golf course. Martin points out the narrow island at the end of the runway that I should fly over on the final approach turn. We are not going to make a full stop landing. Instead we are making a touch and go, because we will fly a couple of traffic patterns around the airport. Basically, we will be taken off, turn around and land a couple of times before we end the flying lesson. A little rough on the touchdown here. Coming in on final for the last time. Flaps down, landing and taxi lights on. I always seem to be a little too high on final, as Martin several times gestured down with a hand. We taxi up to the hangar where the plane will be stored for the night and go through the parking checklist before we push the plane into the hangar.
Electrical consumers, allting som drar el utom
strobe.
Engine master. Strobe nav lights off. Electrical master off. Interior lights checked.
Ja. Och den ska man hålla. Den är hotwirad på batteriet.
Så att inte det drar ut på natten.
Exakt.
Sådär.
Bra! Då har du överlevt det också.
Ja, härligt. Ja.
Men bra
Det gick
jobbat.
ju bra ändå. Tack så mycket.
Jag tyckte det var en bra insats. Absolut.
Ja.
Tack själv.
Tack. Det kan vi plocka fram sen. Och så den där lilla grunkan där uppe också.
Just det, den kan du ta med dig. Lite muskelkraft.
Ja.
Knuffar längst in vid vingroten.
Finns det andra material som de gjorde av också eller? The hangar is shared with a few privately owned planes, among others a newly built replica of the German World War II fighter Focke-Wulf 190.
Det är ganska välpackat där under om man tar bort skåpen.
Ja, verkligen.
Det är liksom inte så mycket.
Ska jag ta något eller?
Nej. Vår DC3 som jag flyger, eller flygande veteraners, den står ju nere i Lelystad i Holland.
Okej. Ja, för det är ju här annars.
Ja,
eller hur?
precis. De var på väg till Dagsford på flyguppvisningen.
Ja.
De fick de motorproblem så
Fan.
de fick vända tillbaka och landa i Lelystad.
Ja. Ska du...
Nu håller de där på och byta motorn på den.
Okej. Oj.
Körde ner med en ny motor.
The lesson costed 2,500 Swedish crowns and gave me about an hour of flying. I'm really glad I got this opportunity to try flying for real. It was a lot of work to hand fly a small plane in these bouncy conditions. Thank you to Martin for letting me control the plane through all the phases of flight, even though it was my first time flying.